Elina mai ke aloha kako apau. Auno o mehana o Kalani. Welcome everyone to the second of our series of talks of great scholarly lessons from some of our wisest minds of the day. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be fine with me calling them that. And today I am joined again by the incredibly talented Hailama Farden. And yeah, Hailama, would you please open up today's offering with a pule?
Ai, hiki no. Olo kako e ho malu kako. E ke aliʻi kamakualani ki ke loa ko ke au holokoa. E iho I mākou kaupo I aloha, I akoko mei nei, ma o ke papahana nei. E kua, ke hapai aku nei mākou I ke aloha, mākou aliʻi maka AINANA o iho I o Prince Kūhiō. Me ka pō maikai, o loa mei nei ia mākou, ke iho akipa o Dr. Kalani Akana, I ke iala, e hui pū me mākou a walaau o ike. I kanani o ko mākou aliʻi. O iei mākou e hoʻolaulea nei ka Lei Aliʻi. Ia po e nona ka hoʻoilina I waiho I momo mākou a hiki ke ia mauna. No leila ke kua nau e mālama ki ei kalani papahana ke ia la, me hana kona alakai ana me mākou wapolo. Me ke aloha nui a oi, e pule ai nei ma o Iesu Kristo lako mākou hoʻola. Amen.
Mahalo, mahalo. You know, Hailama, as we go through this series, you know, you've been able to share with us, you know, some words of wisdom and inspiration about Prince Kūhiō. What would you like to share with us today?
Well, first of all, thank you again for hosting this kukakuka today. It's so important. And, you know, I think it's also important to remind our family watching that even with our greatest love, you know, this idea came up quickly, but with most reverent aloha for our Kūhiō, Prince Kūhiō. And I can dare to claim our, because we, as I alluded to in my pule, are still touched by his legacy today. And, you know, I think in your and my and our other family of workers discussion about Kūhiō, we feel him, and we want to make sure that the rest of Hawaii who may not be attached to him continues to remember the importance of Prince Kūhiō and his legacy, even though he's been dead a century now, physically, but not dead in the hearts of our people who have benefited in many ways, whether it's through Hawaiian Homelands, Aina, or Pula, or Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs, the Royal Order of Kamehameha, or other PUA and ho'oilina legacies left to them. And, you know, earlier, and I know I mentioned this before, that you asked me to be one of the guest speakers, and it's always easy to do that, but I'd rather bring on friends that I know more than I do. And today, your selection of having Dr. Kalani Akana, with whom I've been a friend for many, many years. And I think he's a great legacy of Kūhiō in leadership and talent, and he holds not only as a kauka, as a doctor, but he also is a kumuhula. And I thank you for honoring that request that we bring in other friends, because I enjoy hearing their stories. They've shared things with me that I know our family needs to hear. So mahalo to you, Mehana, for being our hostess and just celebrating Kūhiō the way we can today.
No, I'm so excited, Hailama. You know, I'm a life learner, and I want to absorb as much as I can. And there's always these moments of wisdom, you know, that come forward, that even though, no matter how many times you've heard the mo'olelo, yeah, something new comes forward, and it's just, it sits on my body like a beautiful leimomi, and I adore it. So thank you so much for joining us today, Hailama. And I'm going to, you did part of his introduction already, but I just absolutely love this man. Me and Dr. Akana shared a space, in an office space on the third floor of our building down at Nalamakukui. And it was during those times that I've learned so much, so much from him. Like you said, Hailama, or like Hailama has already introduced, that he is a kauka, receiving his PhD. He is a kumu hula. And what I love about Kalani is he's one of the very, very few people that has chosen to teach mele oli, right, to people. I can count the number of teachers who will focus on mele oli and go and in deep on those words of our ancestors, and bring them forward to today. And for that, I am, as a male oli myself, I am so humbled by just a cadre of chanters that he's created out there. But yes.
Even with his hula and taking students to the Kamehameha Day competition. And, my connection to him is through AHAHUI Olelo Hawaii, for which he served as president quite a few times. And under his leadership of AHAHUI Olelo Hawaii, Dr. Akana also brought us a building. We had an office downtown, big time back then, Merchant Street. And and on top of that, I got a mahalo Kalani because folks know me as the face of Mana Leo, the TV show, and yet Kalani is the hakupa Hana. It was because of Kalani's, I guess, instituting this program called Mana Leo, a TV show that ran from 1996 all the way to 2008. And we were able to capture the voice of probably a little over 100 of our last Mana Leo and protecting that voice. And I also admire that Kalani has taken on the kuleana of preserving string figures along with Oli, because our kupuna did that. And then also in my other capacity as Ikuna Halani of Haleonali'i, Kalani has served us as the first Haleonali'i o Hawaii, Ikuku Auhau Nui, or this state historian. And he just retired on December 31st of this year in that role, and he'll be receiving a special cape this coming convention. But there's just so much to talk about Kalani, but we'd also got to let him talk. So sorry for interrupting you too, Mehana.
No, that is wonderful. That was wonderful. And it just goes to show, I actually first saw you, Hailama, on those, and Kalani too, I believe, on those recordings when I was just a wee little girl. Yes. The two of you on TV, on the Olelo channel, and watch you guys, even though I understood almost nothing of what you guys were talking about at that time, it still just sunk in with me. I could not turn away, from just hearing Olelo Hawaii being spoken with old and with new and with those, you guys were way much younger then, too. And yeah, so awesome. So let us get over to Dr. Akana now. Before me and it's gonna turn into the Kalani Akana Day.
It'll be a rule. Yeah, stop. As Mono Boy said, stop it.
No, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful, and it's just to show both of our aloha for you.
Mahalo, mahalo. I'm touched and humbled. And just another association with Hailama is actually I first met him at Alakukaika at Kamehameha schools. He was a young whippersnapper, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and he still is. And later on, we found out that my working with Kupuna Elizabeth Kawahi Paula is the one that helped encourage him when he was just a child at Waianae Elementary School. Many connections.
Yes, beautiful connections.
Okay, so mahalo for this invitation to talk about our Prince Kūhiō. As Hailama mentioned, his impact today still goes on and on. This presentation I gave to the Department of Hawaiian Lands, Hawaiian DHHL, and it's just a look at his life and maybe some thoughts about his accomplishments and why those things occurred. So if, let's see if I could, can I share?
Yes, you can. And sorry, let me, oh yeah, there you go. And then Kalani, if you can unmute yourself. I'm sorry, I pushed the wrong button. Got so excited.
Oh, was I talking all this time?
No, we heard you. We heard you talking earlier. Just right now. Yeah. Yay.
Okay, it's not going. There you go. Ke aloha kākou e ka ohana na ohana. Mai ka lahiki a ka lākau. O ke ia o ike pili ana ka mali ikane o Jonah Kūhiō Kalanianaʻole. Born March 26th, this month, 1871 at Koloa, Kauai. Now his name Kūhiō, I would like to share as one of his family members. In fact, the regent of our Ali'i once shared with me is that Ku means to stand, right? Hio means to lean. And I always thought of Hio as being leaning with the ear towards his people. But he shared with me another beautiful interpretation that Kūhiō means to stand towards leaning towards his people. And I think this is a prophetic name because it tells of his nature and the reason why he was able to accomplish a lot. His father was David Kahalepouli Pi'ikoi. It's a very blurred picture of him. And his mother was Victoria KINOIKI Kekaulike. Now, there's a reason why there's a tiara in her hair. And this was probably from the coronation of Kalakaua. She was the daughter of KINOIKI along with her sister Pu'uhonua Kalani, and of course Queen Kapi'olani. And these were all granddaughters of KAUMUALI'I. Now we have a family tree at the very top. You see from left to right, David KAWANANAKOA, KUHIō Kalanianaʻole, and Edward Keliahonui. David KAWANANAKOA being the oldest, KUHIō being the middle and child, and Edward Abno Keliahonui being the youngest. Here you see the father, David Kahalepouli. Now his name is an interesting one, Halepouli, dark house. He's named after, as Lili'u was named for Kina'u's smarting eyes, since she was a kuhina nui at that time. Kahalepouli was born at that same time. And this name commemorates the fact that the house that Kina'u was in had to be shuttered in so that the light wouldn't affect Kina'u's eyes. So he and Lili'u Kalani were born at about the same time. His father was Pi'ikoi and his mother Kekahili. When we go to the Kekaulike side, her father was Kūhiō. He was a chief of Hilo and KINOIKI. Now Kūhiō gets we hear the name Pu'uhonua Kalani. In fact, it's the name of the one of the chapters of Hawaiian ALII that I belong to. The mother, Pu'uhonua Kalani, was descendant of Waimea chiefs, and Elelule is a very interesting person. He was the son of Ululani, and she was the one who called and chanted to Kamehameha, calling him Ka'iwa Kilo Moku, and the father, Keawe Mauhili, who was the great chief of Hilo. So Elelule. And on the Kūhiō's grandmother, KINOIKI, was the daughter of Kapua'amohu or Kapua'amohu and KAUMUALI'I. KAUMUALI'I being the son of Kaiokulani and Kamakahele. Now I have yellow here because these were actual rulers. and high chiefs and mo'i. So Kūhiō came from a very illustrious line of ali'i. Pi'i Koi, although he was a KAUMUALI'I of Kauai, he was actually related to KAUMUALI'I. So there's some relationships there. As a youngster, Kūhiō was educated at the Royal School. And the Royal School here is about where the Royal School today is. It was actually a boarding house and a school together. He also attended St. Albans. Now this St. Albans later became Iolani School. And also Punahou. His name, Prince Cupid, comes from when he was a student at St. Albans. And I'm not sure if this picture is when he was at St. Albans, but the teacher, Pierre Jones, was the one quoted to have said, "He's so cute, just like the pictures of Prince Cupid." Here's a picture of, this gentleman on the far left might have been Kūhiō, I'm not quite sure. But it's just a picture to show that he went to, at that time, called Oahu College, hence the O on their football uniforms. But as you can see, there are several Hawaiians in this class. He also attended St. Matthew's College in San Mateo, California. And the one seated is the eldest brother, David Kāwananakoa. Kūhiō is on our left. And the younger brother, Edward Abno Kiliahonui, on the far right. Unfortunately, Edward contracted typhoid fever and passed away in Honolulu at a young age. You can find this plaque in San Mateo. I've never been there, but I know this story. And if you read in the bottom, well, let's read from the top. During the summer of 1885, 3 young Hawaiian princes rode the waves at the mouth of the San Lorenzo River on redwood planks they ordered cut in the shape of olo surfboards. Olo is a type of surfboard, yeah, by the local timber mill. And then it names them, the princes, His Royal Highness Prince Jonah Kūhiō Kalanianaʻole, Royal Highness Prince David La Mea Kahalepoli Kawananakoa, His Royal Highness Prince Edward Abno Kiliahonui. While attending St. Matthew's Hall Military School in San Mateo, they stayed during their vacations with the Swan family. Now, the reason why the Swan family is because one of the Swan matron, I believe her name was Anna, was a Marin. The Hawaiians called him Manini. Vineyard Street in Honolulu is named after the vineyards that David Marin planted. But this Anna Marin Swan is who hosted the boys on their vacation time. And by the way, Queen Kapiolani visited them on her way to the Queen's Jubilee, Queen Victoria's Jubilee in London. Later on, Kūhiō went to the Royal Agricultural College in England. He was an avid sportsman. Here you see him on the far left with the Rambler Bicycle Club. You know, I kind of hate this picture in a way because, look, they make the Asian sit down on the floor in an inferior position to the Caucasian gentleman standing above.
Oh, yeah.
He formed the Kumu Kalanianaʻole. Now, this is, of course, not his, but his writing unit's colors were red and white, similar to this group. The women had red pa'u and white blouses, and the men had white with red sashes. This is a song for a famous chant for Kalanianaʻole and his writing club, Pu'UHONUA. And I wanted to open it anyway. I'm trying to find a way to get it, but I'm just going to play. This is Mrs. Pukui chanting this chant. Holding up my phone. I hope you did. And so it likens their colors. Maybe they're lei and the red to, well, here she goes. Isn't that fabulous?
That's fabulous, Kalani.
That was Mrs. Pukui, and she learned that from Joseph E. Lalaole. But I thought it would be nice to hear her voice again.
That was beautiful. Mahalo nui for that. Do
You're
you know the
welcome.
hula to it?
What's that?
Do you know the hula to it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I think we're gonna have a Papa Hula soon.
There, there you go. We actually have a video of Mapuana de Silva's daughters dancing it at our on the OHA webpage.
Oh yeah, okay. I must go look at it then. I must go check it out.
It's under culture for Namamo Makamai.
Oh, awesome, awesome.
Okay, in 1883, the two surviving boys, princes, KAWANANAKOA and KOHIO, were named as heirs to the throne after Lili'u Kalani. Now this is official, right? So just a little about the older brother, Prince Kawananakoa. In 1891, he was a Privy Council member appointed by Lili'u Kalani. He was arrested for the counter-revolution, but he was released. It's a nice picture of him, yeah, in his vaquero outfit. Kūhiō, however, was imprisoned in 1895 as one of the leaders of the counter-revolution. He received a death sentence, but it was commuted. And he was in the prison. He was put in the prison. You just see the walls here. Honolulu Harbor is above in the picture on the far right. And they called it the Castle of the Haole, but it actually was a prison. You know, unfortunately, many Hawaiians in this counter-revolution who were in prison for, like Mr. Bush, George Bush, or is it George? The editor was in prison here, and he contracted typhoid, tuberculosis, as well as Navahi, who lived at that time in Kapalama as well as in Hilo. But Navahi contracted tuberculosis in a prison, right? Is a good breeding ground for TB. Although they didn't have any connection to the counter-revolution. This is, of course, Kūhiō and his wife, Princess Elizabeth Kahanu Ka'auai, a relative of Queen Kapiolani. And this is at their home at Pu'uhonua in Waikiki. I'm sure Monu talked about them or share the song, mele for Pu'uhonua. This is Prince Kūhiō at the time of the annexation. They spent time with Lili'uokalani. This is, you can see Kūhiō with the white trousers. Next to him is, on his right side is Edward Lili Kalani. And this is Lili Kalani on the opposite side. You can't see her face. This is David KAWANANAKOA with the white trousers. And Princess Kaiulani, who he was betrothed to. Our beloved queen, of course, is seated. And other members of her ladies in waiting, etc., over there. After the overthrow, illegal overthrow, Kūhiō went overseas. And in 1899 to 1902, he fought in the Boer War on the side of, with the English troops. This was in South Africa, yeah. In 1903, although he never ruled in the Kingdom of Hawaii, he was elected to Congress in 1903 as a representative. He also reorganized the Royal Order of Kamehameha. This is the Royal Order established by Kamehameha V. You know, and today we still have, of course, the Royal Order. You see them lined up here. And I believe this is John Lane, Mayor John Lane with him with the top hats. Isn't that neat? And there you see him with his cane. I believe the bottom picture is their first Kamehameha Day celebration. This is an announcement of the Royal Order. They were called a historical society. This is Kūhiō and the Louisiana Purchase, and you can see him actually standing, yeah? You see him leaning? So yeah. This is also sort of an interpretation of his name, Kūhiō, standing, leaning towards one side. There's nothing written or orally told about why, but you know, part of it is old age, part of it is spending life in prison, going abroad, fighting in wars, you know. Princess Kahano. Now, I thought this was very interesting. You know, he was called Keli'i Maka AINANA, the citizen prince or the commoner's prince. In 1907, he made a congressional tour. So all these gentlemen in the back served with him in Congress. Who paid for their trips? I don't know. I'm kind of guessing it was Kūhiō. And here they are at the Wilcox House. Now, this is kind of significant to me because I've always thought, how did Prince Kūhiō, without any vote, in Congress he didn't have a vote, right? How was he able to push for the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act, right? And part of it, I think, is his whining and dining, his personality, and getting to know these gentlemen and persuading them in their offices that they needed to do this, bringing them here to show them how our people live and what was happening in Hawaii. Dr. Daviana McGregor will talk in length about the AHAHUI PU'UHONUA on the Hawaii, Hawaiian Protective Society. People like Reverend Akaiko Akana, the first Hawaiian pastor of Kaia'o Church, John Wise, John Lane. These gentlemen all had, especially Akaiko Akana, he talked about this, wrote about this profusely because he saw in downtown Honolulu that many Hawaiians were there away from their land, away from growing their food and the problems associated with living in a city. And he always wanted to encourage Hawaiians to get back onto the land, hence the concept of land being PU'UHONUA. So they formed the society. Kūhiō took a great interest in this society, and I believe he took much of the momentum, mana'o, and the impetus for the Hawaiian Homes Commission Act from these gentlemen. Again, as people like the Reverend Akana saw, the urbanization of Honolulu and the loss of Aina. Also, things like the war took a toll on Hawaiians. Many Hawaiians are crammed into these tenements. I believe this is at Iwile. And so in 1918, he formed the Honolulu Ad Club. These ad clubs are meant to, promote commercialism in Honolulu, especially for Hawaiian businesses, Hawaiian people. He also formed the Hawaiian Civic Club of Honolulu, which is the mother club of all civic clubs. And as president of the association, Hailama Farden mentioned, the impact through scholarships, through legislation, through resolutions, to civic duty comes directly from the leadership of Kūhiō. I'm going backwards. The Hawaiian Homes Commission Act of 1920, again, I thought this was amazing that he did this without any vote in Congress. And my thoughts about how he was able to come, are just my thoughts and my theory, let's say. And signed into law by Harding in 21. Prince Kūhiō was a prince. He became a prisoner and a politician. He died in January 7th of 1922. This is his funeral in Kaiahao Church with all the societies attending. In fact, you see here the members of Lei Aliʻi attending his coffin. He's interned at Mauna Ala. There you see in uniform, the Kamehameha cadets carrying giant pulo'olo kahili in the background. You see his widow, Princess Kahanu, and to the side of her, Princess Kapi'olani. And John Lane, the former mayor of Honolulu, with his Royal Order of Kamehameha regalia. To your far right, you see Reverend Akaiko Akana. And other gentlemen, if people know them, please let me know so we can identify them. There's a statue of him in Waikiki. And I think I'll stop here unless I have more time.
You know.
Okay, so just sharing. This is Abigail KAWANANAKOA, members of the former Halinawa who went underground, wanted to revive the Halinawa in its form and function, but because of the undertones painted by a missionary in the missionary faction, they called it instead Aliʻi. And Abigail KAWANANAKOA Campbell was the first regent. Her son Kalakaua, Princess Kapi'olani, who you saw in the previous slide, and then Lili'o Kalani. I believe this is Po'umaikilani. Aliʻi again. Royal Order of Kamehameha, which the reformed Royal Order was accomplished by Kūhiō. Other societies, Ka'ahumanu, Mamaka Kaua. And then I end with this little song by Ha'imoe Ipo, which is a name that Lili'u Kalani used when she wrote, especially after the overthrow. This is written for her, and I'll just translate the first verse. Hiki mai kalono ia une, news arrived to me. Aya o upoki ila I kawa. My young siblings are in kawa. Ike kakela nui o Kiaupuni, in the castle of the government. Kahi I noho ai me ka maluhia, where he sat in calmness. This, of course, refers to Kūhiō when he was in prison at Kawa. We say Kawa, Alakawa Street, but that area in Iwile was called Kawa. And with that, we remember our beloved Prince Kūhiō Kalanianaʻole. As you can see through his life, he surely lived up to his name, Kūhiō, leaning forward towards his people to see, to listen, and to feel, and to do something about that. So, umia kahanu. Aloha kako.
Mahalo nui e Kalani. That was fabulous. You know,
Mahalo. And Hai Lama's still with us.
Hai Lama's back. Yay.
No, I was still here. I listened. I just know what time I have to go, but I'm still on. I'm happy. I enjoyed the whole presentation. Mahalo nui ia'oe e Kalani.
Oh, yeah.
Hai Lama, did you have any questions that came about from his presentation? You probably know all the answers. You probably can fill in.
No. Yeah, I have questions, but I mean, some of them are like in little things. So the choreography that you know of that mele for Kūhiō that Mrs. Pu'uhonua did, was that passed down from Mrs. Pu'uhonua, or was it from Uncle Joe to Mrs. Pu'uhonua to Auntie Namaka to Kumu Mapuana?
That's exact. Well, the one that Mapuana does, yes, Mapuana de Silva learned it from Auntie Pat Bacon.
Okay.
Of course, both of them, Mrs. Bacon, who just passed away, as well as Mrs. Pu'uhonua, they learned it together from Ilalaole in the 30s. I believe it was in the 30s. Ilalaole had returned to Honolulu and I guess had this class, to pass on his hula olapa. So I do have a recording of Ilalaole too.
With this same mele.
Same mele.
I want your Spotify playlist or your iTunes playlist.
So I kind of soft, yeah. I'm chuckling because he goes, yeah,
the lole lua ka'ua.
Yeah. I just noticed that.
Well, yeah, and so I celebrate these little tidbits because they're not so little. I mean, I having heard a lot of Uncle Joe's chanting because my aunt took hula and learned from him, which is I think his last student. And she started in 1940, I think 7 or so, around there anyway. And she learned, I guess he was on Lucky and Mouse Street in Kapahulu, and she had to live with him for a while. So I've not heard his version of this hula, and it always gets me excited to hear more. I knew daughter, Auntie Betty, and then he had a son too that I met once, was an opera singer. But you know, mahalo that they, and this is what's beautiful, is today you'll hear people say, let's talk about the KAWANANAKOAs, for example. Oh, you know, they're not prince, they're not princess, and yet nobody stopped when it came to their father or their kupuna, Prince David Kawananakoa and Kūhiō. Why? You know, because our kupuna knew, and you know, it goes back to that Aliʻi, AINANA. You know, our chiefs are chiefs because of the people, which means when we forget who our ALII are, or were designated by the mo'i in the 1880s, we forget that, then we are the ones who are removing from our culture even today. So, and you know, that country that has captured us in 1893, they're the ones who teach us no more rules, no more rulers, no more ali'i. And you know, if we subscribe to that, then we need to blame ourselves and hold ourselves responsible for not carrying on that part of our culture, which is the legacy of our ali'i. Yes, there are a lot of ali'i out there. There are a lot of kamehameha out there. There are. And yet, though, the Kawananakoa Kūhiō line, especially, and the two brothers, because the third had passed away, as Kalani shared, their bloodlines still run, and they carry the lines of the ali'i of all four islands, all four major islands, I should say, not all four islands. But we cannot forget as a people, because what we're doing is we're subscribing to that mentality of the Western world that says no more ali'i. And I don't think our kupuna bought into that. And that's why when they died, you saw, or when they lived, look at Uncle Joey doing this, Oli, and then Mrs. Pu'uhonua picks it up. They wrote these chants for, and there's a number of chants for Kūhiō, number of chants for Kawananakoa, and Kaiulani, and etc. So, you know, at what point did we tell ourselves stop? You know, I mean, when did we become so Western that we forgot our ali'i? And that's why, Mehana, the fact that you're able to pull this program together is so important, because we need to continue telling of our ali'i so that our children, their children, don't forget. And, you know, that's why I knew, you knew Kalani, I know Kalani, I knew that he'd be a perfect addition to this. And mahalo for joining us on week 2 for this, Kalani.
You know, one of the things we didn't cover in the beginning is, again, that this is you know, a part of a group of organizations that have come together to offer throughout this year what we're terming a Lei Aliʻi, right? A joining of all those ali'i legacies and lessons learned from our regal kupuna that lead us into our own civic engagement today, our own sense of oiwi leadership today. And Hailama is, you know, is one of those people. I mean, I swear he's 100 years old. He's you know, on his license, I think it says he's about the same age as me, but he's really about, I don't know, 120, 130 years old. But in such a short time in his short life, he has, you know, amassed so much kuleana, and one of those is being the president of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Yeah, and also he has a very prominent role at Kamehameha schools. And you know, the outlook from both organizations and the one that I represent now, the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, along with the King Kamehameha Day Commission and the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, we kind of come together to offer our communities a look, an exploration, and an opportunity to jump in. You know, once we have introduced to everyone, again, those very precious lessons from our kupuna, because why reinvent the wheel? Right? One of my favorite Olelo No'eau, you know, talks about how the road has been walked already and done so well. You know, that all we have to do is follow that. And yeah, that's just going to be coming up. So Prince Kūhiō is just the first of this first pua that we're going to put really into this lei here, or haku into this lei, or kui into this lei ali'i this year.
Kalani gave a nice perspective from birth to death, that whole range. And there's just so much about him that you can't fit in this short time. And there's so much that, I mean, I was telling, and Kalani probably knows these stories better than I do, about, you know, when it is said when Kūhiō died, he was the last of the fully contained masters of Lua. And meaning that he knew all of his ai. And when they had to bring back Lua, some of they're pukas, and they had to be filled. And you know, having talked to Likeke Oglinawani, you know, we were talking about how, you know, some of the pukas had to be filled, but in order for it to carry on that part of the tradition, Kūhiō supposedly died with all of that in his. And then there's stories about him traveling and getting into a ruckus with a person because he looked down on him because he was quote unquote black. And Kūhiō would not tolerate racism at all. And so much the poor, I pity the people who dared challenge him because they were injured. They were left injured because of Kūhiō, although that wasn't his nature to go out and look for a fight. If you caused it, I mean, there's a situation in the continental United States, there's a situation in, I think it was Switzerland, and Kūhiō had to pay a hefty fine for that beef because I guess that person was pretty high ranked. And so I think it was 500 American dollars back in 1800s, late 1800s. That's a lot of money. But then there's this pilina with Princess Kahanu, and then his pilina with his aunt, Queen Kapi'olani. And her response, you know, when her nephews were arrested and held in, and I think Kalani's on telling me these stories, but there's so much to this man who lived just over 50 years, you know, and yet there's so much he did. Even if you look at the government, the legacies in the departments that we have today, how many of them connect to Kūhiō too. And Kalani said it before, and I will continue to preach it. Congressman without any voting power was able to influence others to pass the Hawaiian Homes Act and make it law. No voting power. I mean, imagine the ability to convey your passion so that the people sign up for you. And then finally, I'll say when he died, the tributes that came in from his fellow congressmen on who he was, even those who probably stood on the opposite side of the aisle from him that disagreed with him, heralded him, eulogized him in a beautiful manner, almost to the level as the way our people eulogized him in their kanikawa and their oli.
That would be nice to look at. There's some expert out there like yourself who could talk more about those. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, well, I should put it together because it's there and it's in public record. I remember us talking about this at the Association of White Civic Club level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, Hailama, I'm gonna get you your own show one of these days. Very quickly. Yeah, we have to, you know, have you share, you know, some of the ike that you have, you know, about this and so many other things. Oh my goodness. You know, well, pals, we've had a great time today, and I'm sure our Kānaka out there have learned, I've learned new things about Kūhiō Kalanianaʻole today, and I'm very grateful for that. You know, so mahalo nui, Dr. Kalani Akana, who is the cultural specialist currently at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, but also Kumu Hula, a Kumu Oli, and just one of the most fabulous people that I know. And mahalo again to Hailama, who we will continue to see on all of our programs here. Mahalo for jumping in and staying in and adding your ike to the umeke ka'eo today. Yeah. So aloha nui kākou. Malama pono.
Aloha.